He stated that he wanted a divorce from her at that time. Things were never, I guess, what you would call normal after that. Our tires were getting slashed. There was even an instance where there was a dead animal left in the mailbox for me to find. Yeah, it just was pretty crazy.
So you know Mr. Martin because he was a victim in a case you were prosecuting. Who was it that you were prosecuting?
Objection.
All right, Ms. Foster, who was it that you were prosecuting?
Joan Harmon.
You became aware of the murders in Pembroke.
I did.
Can you tell the jury what you personally observed from Joan after those murders occurred?
I had heard about him on TV that day, and she came in. She was supposed to be working at 4 to close, and she came in very excited. And when I mean excited, it wasn't like scared excited, it was excited. She was almost happy excited and said, "Did you hear it?" I'm sorry.
You just told us that she was excited and almost happy.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about that?
I thought it was a strange behavior. Yes, I listened to her a lot because she talked about it quite a bit for several days or weeks. And there were things that were a little concerning.
And I'm not trying to ask you the specifics.
Right.
Did you eventually call the police?
I did.
Yes, she had came up here, was showing us how she wanted the ceiling done, and when she left up, it's like got 2 steps. She stepped up, and when she stepped up, her blouse came up, and she had a pistol behind her waist.
Did you get a good enough look at it to tell what kind of gun it was?
It was like a Glock.
What were your observations of Joan in particular?
She wanted to be the boss, pretty much of anything and everything.
So the judge found that Joan had failed to meet her burden.
That's correct.
To show that there was a threat of domestic violence.
That is correct.
We have this threat. We know she's committed the crime of bigamy. She's been prosecuted for it. We hear about slashed tires, dead animals. And then, as Julia just pointed out, what do we have? We have her at the cell phone store with the victim's cell phone. It's entirely plausible. And again, the defense doesn't have to draw the roadmap, but the inference is clear. The evidence is there. And I think what we saw some with other witnesses, maybe the state's trying to hide some of the other evidence against Ms. Harmon so that they can convict Mr. Martin. And I think that's where the defense is going with this, to really, again, unite the confusion under the flag of Joan Harmon and cast all blame on her. And they have good evidence to back that up.
You know, that cell phone really bothers me. Really, really bothers me. Now, I want you to take a listen. I'm going to play Marlene LaRock, who is the neighbor who testified, and then one of the detectives. And I want you to listen to their testimony as we put a couple pieces together here on a fact that really, really bothers me when it comes to Joan Harmon.
Pam called my house about 5:30 that evening. And she told me, she said, I picked up your message off the answer machine. And then she told me a little about Jerry Lee. And then she asked me if I had seen Cal that day. And I said I had gone up to see Cal, but I never saw him. I said, and your house was open. And she says, open? I said, yeah, your front door was open, but he never came to the door. And she said, okay. She said she had asked the next door neighbor to go look for Cal in the back because she thought maybe he had fallen or something, because his keys and his wallet, she said, were still laying on the table. And then all of a sudden she says, hold on, don't hang up. I think I see something. And so I held on. Then all of a sudden I heard this scream. It was like a scream of somebody got startled. You know, like you run over a mouse or something. It wasn't a blood-curdling scream. And then it was pure silence, nothing.
In December of 2015, you you learned that the AT&T store on Fort Campbell Boulevard in Hopkinsville had come into possession of Pam Phillips' cell phone. Is that right?
That's correct, sir.
Did you get a call from an AT&T employee?
No, sir.
Good dispatch?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and did you respond to the AT&T store?
I did, sir.
Okay, and I believe your report indicates you watched video. The store itself had surveillance video.
I did, sir.
And you watched that video, and it was clear that Joan Harmon was the person who brought this phone in.
It appeared that way, yes, sir.
Okay. You retrieved the phone from the AT&T store. It had already been wiped or restored to factory settings. Is that
Correct,
right?
sir. Mm-hmm.
In fact, while you were still in the store, you got a call from Joan Harmon, didn't you?
I believe that's correct.
She was trying to tell you the story about how she came.
Sustained. Judge, can we approach?
All right, let me put these pieces together, and Julie Janae, I want to confirm some things with you. Got a note from a great viewer, Bob in Portland, Oregon, and I think he makes a great point here. If she's on the phone and then screams, we all think this is the moment that she dies, and then Joan is the one who then has her phone? Like, how does she get that phone? She's got to be at the scene of the murder to get the phone. If, in fact, Pam is on the phone with Marlene LaRock, the neighbor, and then screams and everything goes silent, we're all thinking that's when she gets killed at some point right around there. That's the last time we hear from her. And then Joan ends up with the cell phone? Does that mean she has to be there when all that is happening? Julie Janae, what do we know about trying to put those pieces together?
I'm going to add one nugget that the jury hasn't heard yet, but we learned it through the pretrial litigation of this case, that Joan Harmon says she found that phone in her yard. We don't know much more, and you heard there was an objection right before the detective was going to tell the jury exactly why Joan Harmon called to explain how she found the phone. That is the biggest question to me in this case. How did she get the phone, and what was her explanation when she went to the AT&T store for being in possession of it? Did she know it was Pam Phillips' phone when she took it in, knowing that they likely could trace where this phone belonged? So similar to the dog tags in this case that happened to be at the crime scene, she may be arguing the same thing. Someone trying to frame her leaving the victim's phone in her yard.
Kirk Nurmi, I'm thinking if this jury thinks it's like, wow, wait, she's on the phone, she screams, it goes silent, and then all of a sudden, a couple of months later, Joan Harmon has the phone. That means she's got to be there.
You're right, Vinny. And think about it. She's got the phone, and then she's calling the officer to see what he's figured out. She's kind of trying to control the situation. You can see this more antisocial behavior out of her. And whether that exact link can be drawn through evidence, the inference is clear that she's involved in this. And the defense has done a good job of painting that inference and taking the blame off their client and towards someone else.
Yeah, and it's like I'm waiting for some gas can evidence at this point, Kirk, and I know you know what I mean. This is unreal. All right, let's take a listen to the cell phone expert, Jonathan Reeves, who also testified.
Could those two phones have been in the same place?
No, absolutely not. They are too far apart, just not just geographically, but by the number of cell sites that are between them. Any one of those other cell sites between Elkton or Pembroke and Fort Campbell, there's numerous sites. Any one of those would serve those calls before Elkton would. So it's physically impossible that those devices were at the same place for the vast majority of the day. I mean, early 8 a.m., they possibly could have been both in Pembroke. But after that, they would have been distinctly separate.
All right, Julie Janae, usually it's the prosecution has all the digital evidence. They bring in the cell phone experts. This is someone called by the defense. What's the takeaway for the jury about where everyone's phone is?
John Reeves is the only cell phone data expert who's taking the stand in this case. The gist of his testimony is that based on these towers that are many, many, many miles apart, there are only a few that the Pembroke area can connect to, but that it confirms that Martin's phone was at home at the time that he said he was at home and not out dumping bodies around Rosetown Road. Also, that it's clear that Pamela Phillips' phone was traveling in an opposite direction of Christian Martin's phone during the time after the murders. Now, this is the exact opposite that the state initially used to get the indictment of Christian Martin.